everybody, we're coming back from the break. It's called the Business to Business Network Show. My name is Rex Perry. If you just turned on your radio or stumbled into one of our videos, we're talking business, politics, and economics. And we're focused right now on Arizona for just one of our segments here. We've got Constantine on the line. Constantine, give us your last name. Introduce yourself, please.
Last name is Querard, Constantine Querard.
And give us a background. Introduce your project. What are you guys working? You're actually down at the Arizona State Legislature building right now as we speak, correct?
I am. That's right. By the time you listen to this, it may be old news, but we are at the Capitol right now. We're working on term limits on Congress, which is incredibly popular everywhere except Congress.
Yeah. Now explain a little bit, lay the background, because this has been an effort for quite a while. To give us a little bit of background and history on this.
It has actually. It was a really big thing back in the 90s. There were 23 states back in the early 90s that passed term limits on a lot of times on their state officials, elected officials, but also their members of Congress. And in 95, the Supreme Court struck down congressional term limits, saying that it required a constitutional amendment. So it then became necessary to say, okay, well, now we have to amend the Constitution to get congressional term limits. How do we do that? And that's the process that we're pursuing right now.
And explain that process, because now you're actually working from state to state in Arizona. It actually is something on the docket today. Tell us what's happening today.
Yeah, it does. So what Article 5 in the Constitution is basically the part where the founders said, okay, we're going to need to amend this document at some point in time. And so they set it up where if 2/3 of Congress proposes an amendment, then 3/4 of the states can ratify it, and you have yourself an amendment. And before they left the convention, they said, well, wait a second, what if Congress is the problem? Congress would never propose an amendment to fix itself. And so they fixed Article 5. So when they left the convention, it said 2/3 of the states or 2/3 of Congress shall propose, and then 3/4 of the states shall ratify. So the states could go around Congress if Congress were the problem. So theoretically, if 34 states said, hey, we all want an amendment on a subject, and they all picked the same subject, they could gather and write it and vote on it and then send it back to the states for ratification. But that's never happened for as long as you've had your Constitution, because when there's enough state pressure, when enough states all are saying the same thing, hey, we want, let's say, presidential term limits, Congress invariably bends the knee when you show kind of significant mass and support, and they do what you're going to force them to do. And so it's the same thing with term limits. There's been a number of amendments in our history where Congress didn't really want to, but the states basically said, hey, if you don't do this, we will. And so Congress bends the knee, and that's what we're doing now. We've got 12 states that have passed their calls for a term limit amendment. We're in Arizona. We're going to make Arizona State 13, and we've got folks that are working in a number of states. I'm working in a number of western states. We're in Alaska, we're in Idaho, we're in Utah, trying to get basically all the state legislators to basically kind of put the proverbial gun to Congress's head and say, hey, if you don't do this, we will. And we know from our history that if enough states do that, Congress will bend the knee.
Now, is this actually a law, a referendum? What kind of docket, what kind of paperwork are you doing with the state? What kind of vote? Does it have to go to the floor? Tell us how this, give us the nitty-gritty how it works.
So in the legislature, most things are bills, and bills basically affect your laws and your statutes and things like that. There are also resolutions. Now, resolutions, generally speaking, don't have a lot of force of law behind them. We pass a resolution to ask Congress to do X, Y, or Z. Resolutions don't require the governor's signature. The governor can't veto a resolution. It's just an act of the House and the Senate concurring. In the case of Article 5 resolutions, though, they are significant because they are sent to Congress and they're recorded by the clerks in Congress. And again, if you ever hit 2/3 of the states passing the same largely the same resolution, all of a sudden you would trigger the Article 5 amendment process. So Congress tracks those very closely because if you get close, they know they have to act. So what we're doing is a simple resolution. We have one in the House, one in the Senate that are exactly the same. We passed the House committee last week. We're going to be on the House floor this afternoon. So we hope for passage there. We've got a couple of members who are sick and out, so we'll watch our count. But and then we're in the Senate committee this morning. So if we pass the committee in the Senate, it'll go to the floor of the Senate maybe next week, and we could be through with this here the next week and a half.
Now, does the governor have to sign that resolution also?
No, so the governors really don't have a role in resolutions. They can't veto it. They can't sign it. We do have governors who will kind of symbolically sign it because they want to show that they're on board with an issue that term limits polls at probably 85%. It's probably the most popular reform in the country, and so there are a lot of smart politicians who see a parade that side and want to jump to the front of the parade. So sometimes we will have governors who will sign. We also have some governors who are kind of enthusiastic supporters, and so they want to be involved in the process. DeSantis in Florida is a great example of somebody who, is a strong believer in the balanced budget amendment, a term limits amendment, and this whole process. So he travels to states to kind of whip up support. I know Florida's obviously passed their calls. So there's not an official role for governors to take, and obviously in Arizona we don't expect Katie Hobbs to jump in front of this one, but in a lot of states they do.
Yeah, and you do have some congressional representatives here in the state of Arizona that talk good talk, but when it actually comes to try to get things done, we won't mention any names, but that you've had that experience where on record they say, yeah, we're totally in favor of this, but then slowly behind the scenes they slow things down. Have you had that experience?
Oh, sure, and it's Arizona. It's not unique to Arizona, and it's kind of one of the reasons why the states have to lean in and actually force Congress to act, but Congress has no incentive to term limit itself. I mean, it's for a lot of these guys, it's the best job they've ever had. It's the best job they're ever going to have. They're not going to, and the pay is decent. It's not amazing for the workload, but a lot of them don't do that much work. The insider trading, I've heard good things about the insider trading. A lot of folks making a lot of fortunes in Congress, and they have no reason to change the rules themselves. So yes, an 85% issue. I'm not going to run around and campaign against an 85% issue, but would I work quietly to kind of get my local guys to vote no and to preserve the status quo for as long as possible? Sure, and that's basically human nature, and that's one of the things that plagues Congress, and it's one of the reasons why, so many founders wanted rotation in office. Guys like Jefferson were like, this is important. You will have a permanent ruling class if we don't force them out periodically. And he was right, and that's where we are now.
Now, let's switch a little bit. You and I talked before the show about this. We're trying to discuss the concept of a digital democracy project.org. They're based out of Florida. They've got a smartphone app, voatz.com. It's a smartphone app. We're trying to develop a primary before the primary using a digital voting system. And from what I understand is, first of all, it's extremely secure. You have to do facial recognition. You have to upload your driver's license or passport. They do a cross-check with your physical address. They double-check to make sure you're registered in, let's say, District 5 of Arizona, where I live in Gilbert. And they verify all these things, and then they're able to put ideas or ballot ideas or referendums, kind of like what you're doing, out to these registered voters within a particular district, and then tabulate those votes electronically quite quickly, and then the results of the vote are kept on multiple servers spread all over the United States. So if somebody tries to tamper with one of the servers, it's already been recorded multiple places. What's your thoughts about having some sort of database like that, for example, District 5 of Arizona for the congressional district? Your thoughts?
Man, it's so I'm always intrigued and interested by the ways that technology can kind of make things better, faster, more accurate, more secure. Arizona's had some peculiar experiences with election results and election reporting, and there's a lot of skepticism and distrust in the system, which is unhealthy for the system. And so when you're doing that sort of election reform, I think the two biggest things are obviously, does it work? And then equally as large is, will the public trust it? Because even if something works, if people don't trust it, it ends up not working. You have to have results that people kind of, when I announce the results of who got the most votes, it would be nice if the public at large said, okay, we believe that. And then we can proceed. Somebody won, somebody lost, somebody's happy, somebody's unhappy, but nobody feels like they got cheated. Like the system itself isn't being corroded by this sense of distrust or, did we get robbed? So whatever anybody comes up with on the technology side, the biggest thing is going to be selling the public on the fact that it's actually secure. Because if people ultimately are just sort of like, hey, sure, and I, my facial features unlock my phone every time I use it, right? So like, obviously I trust facial recognition. That's how I secure my phone. But if people don't trust it for their elections, even if it works, you won't be able to really apply it well. So the public trust factor is going to be a huge part of that conversation.
Yeah, and I'm talking about just a straw poll. So we're not talking about using it for the elections. We're talking about a system for a congressional representative in District 5, for example, that would be able to reach out to the voters of District 5 and say, hey, everybody, if you'll register on voatzvotes.com, I will be in touch with you as your congressional representative. When I'm getting ready to have to vote on a particular legislation, I would love to get your input. And now you're not doing these polls, because you and I both know polls can be wrong. And especially with the technology nowadays, when everybody's got a smartphone, if I don't recognize the phone number, I don't answer it. So I'm definitely not one of these people.
Yeah.
You know, so these
that makes sense.
So
yeah,
these,
and again, that's because you're not talking about an actual election.
No.
And so from that standpoint, I would say any tool that encourages people to get in the habit of civic participation, any tool that gets people in the habit of researching candidates and races and doing their homework and becoming an informed, educated voter is a good thing. Like, these are good habits you'd want to build. You'd want to build that. Frankly, if it's not a binding vote, I don't know if you'd limit it to just registered voters. Do you limit it to people who are 18 and up? Do you lower it to people who are, to younger than that, because it's not an actual vote, but can it teach good habits? It's like a financial literacy course for a 14-year-old who doesn't actually have any money yet. But it's not too early to learn financial literacy.
Yeah.
So there could be a lot of helpful applications in terms of just kind of developing good habits in voters, because that would be great.
Yeah, and I'll say this publicly because it's public record here. Andy Biggs is my congressional representative. I have tried on multiple occasions to get a phone call back from him or anybody on his staff. I've written emails. There is very little contact. These congressional representatives, once they get into office, and that's why you want the term limits, is because they now become sheltered and insulated from the people that actually live in their district. And I may not have voted for him, but he's still my congressional representative. And so now you've got to have some sort of system to kind of shake the tree, rattle the chain, get their attention. And if you've got umpteen thousand, by the way, when they do this registration, they've got a gold, silver, and bronze when you register. So the gold people are actually willing to go out and knock on doors within District 5, Arizona, and get to know their neighbors and identify people so they can do a physical confirmation that Jim Jones lives at this address, and so you got an on-ground. Then you got silver people that are willing to make phone calls, and they're not as mobile. And then the bronze people, don't bug me until it's time to actually make the vote. Hey, we got about 2 minutes left here. If people want to participate, support you guys, how can they reach you, Constantine?
Listen, the best thing is just termlimits.com, and that's a place where you can basically sign up, and depending on what state you're in, we know what to keep you informed of, so we can let you know when we're in your state, if we're active, if there's a bill coming up in hearing, if there's a way to contact your rep and say, hey, please vote for term limits. Obviously, if you're listening and you're in Arizona, we hopefully have already passed the House, but we'll need to pass the Senate, so everybody should dial into their state senator and ask them to vote yes. By and large, we have good legislators who are responsive to kind of the wishes of their voters, and when they hear from a lot of folks, it does make a difference. You're right, at the congressional level, they're insulated, and they can't be beaten, so they tend to not be very responsive, and that's one of the reasons why you want a rotation in office. You want fresh blood. You want people in there kind of in and out on a regular basis. But at the state level, you go to termlimits.com. Anyone in the country, because you probably got some people that are listening.
Yep.
Worldwide.
From elsewhere.
We passed in 12 states. Again, we've got to get to probably 27, 28 states before Congress says, okay, we'll do it. Which means there's a whole lot of states left where there's action. And so if you're in Idaho, you're in Montana, you're in Utah, you're in Alaska, Kansas is getting ready to pass. We've got, we're in a bunch of states. Sign up, get involved, and we'll keep you posted.
Constantine, thank you so much. Guys, we got to wrap up the show. The music is coming. 123bz.com. If you miss anything, 123bz.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Constantine?
Okay.
Thank you so much. And by the way, we want to hear. Text me after you get out of that committee. If you get it,
we'll let you know.
Good, yeah, and then we'll have you back on, my friend. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good, man.
Bye-bye. Okay, now